Hey, what's up everybody? Austin here from Euphoric connotations, and today's video, or vlog I should say, is a reaction on my own end to recently stumbling across Michael's video from Vsauce about his experience taking ayahuasca and him relaying this experience to Ethan from H3H3 on their podcast. So this is like reactionception here. So anyways, what ayahuasca is it is a brew made from vines found in the Amazonian region, which these indigenous people have taken for quite some time as a form of medicine, a form of, connecting spiritually to the earth and beyond. And recently, and probably within the past as well, but it's kind of become something more so seen on the media as of late than it has been. I'm sure it's been, known by the Western world and by North American studiers of this sort of thing for some time now. But for some reason, it's kind of being brought into the light a lot more heavily as of late. And so what it is it's a brew made from these vines and a couple other plant sources, which has a highly concentrated dose of what's called DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is a naturally occurring chemical in the human body, which gets released upon deep states of sleep and slumber, and also in extreme experiences such as near-death experiences, or right before you die and pass on. It gets released through the body and things to that extent. And so people are mimicking these experiences because it's hard to really relay and consciously be aware of, what we experience during sleep and slumber. I myself, however, am a very big fan of really increasing the experiences of sleep through such tactics as starting a dream journal and doing that for like 2 years every single morning. And, even if you can't remember your dreams, just start writing that you can't remember your dreams down every morning, and eventually, and sometimes you'll even be able to recall your dreams in this moment. Just relaying the fact that you can't remember anything all of a sudden brings it back, to the forefront of your mind, and you're able to relay the experience. And upon doing this for an extended period of time, you will indefinitely increase the experiences. So, however, this drug is a way to mimic all of this. And he goes on to talk about, a lot of different things, a lot of the negative aspects in regards to the field of study in which he participated in this study for, and a lot of the negative connotations and a lot of the lack of progress due to the fact that people don't really feel comfortable talking about or sharing the research, because there's still a lot of, negative light shed on all these people which associate with this research, because they're all just seen as, kind of the wackos of the scientific field or whatever, because they're really involved in the drug studies because they themselves are involved in the drug. Anyways, there's a few things that he talked about that I kind of want to just touch upon and relay my own personal feelings about. And he talks about, doing this for the sake of science. All of this was recorded, and all of this was heavily studied upon and gauged and measured by scientific instruments in the moment while he was there taking these substances, these solutions. And the only problem with that is when you're in a heightened state of experience brought about by these substances, every single thing in the environment is heightened. So it's very wrong to say that the experience that he went through is something that is the baseline for everybody who experiences this phenomenon has gone through, because the majority of people aren't going to have probes on their head. They're not going to have all these lights shining on them. They're not going to be in an environment where everybody around them is not taking the drug as well. And so all of those factors need to be taken into consideration and be brought about upon in discussion, because if you don't, you're missing, what it is that brought about the experience that he had in the first place. because all those things play into the role of what he himself experienced. And I like to tell people that, you can have a bad trip without being on any drugs or substances or enhancements, right? I mean, literally, I can go on a vacation. And I use the word trip because obviously it has a dual meaning associated with it. One which is slang and one which is more so used in the normal English language. Just kind of a play on words here. But anyways, you can go on a vacation and you can have a bad vacation due to the fact that the environment itself sucked and you didn't set it up properly. You weren't properly prepared to go out and travel and interact in these environments, and you didn't properly, set up the environments to have a habitable and comforting experience. So, can you expect to have a pleasant experience on enhancements, on, enhancers? Can you expect to have a positive experience while taking, substances if you don't take these other things into consideration as well beforehand? I don't think you can, because like I said before, you can have a bad trip without taking any substances. So to think that, a good trip is something which you necessarily can't control, I think is a false ideology, because you can set up the environment beforehand and know which is going to cause a pleasant experience for you and everybody in the environment as well. So doing that, you indefinitely increase your odds of having a good trip, just like you would if you're going on a good vacation. You set up the experience to be a positive and a beneficial experience for everybody. And to say that his experience is something which is relatable to everybody else is definitely false. And probably, all the readings and everything to that extent is not necessarily a good estimation as to the baseline of what the experience itself entails. I mean, I think the experiences of life itself are things which influence our perception of reality. And even being in that environment itself is almost like taking the drug. Being down there with the Amazonian tribe and hearing all of the words spoken, just the ambiance, the aura that's there, the lighting, the sounds of nature in the background, and being physically exhausted from the travel. All of these things, impact the mind and impact how you see the world and the experience that you have there. And, it's not necessarily something which is dependent upon the drug itself. What are the effects universally taken in whatever environment? That's kind of more of like the scientific baseline of what really is going to be going on here, physically and chemically and psychologically with the body. So I think that it is neat what it is that he did, but I just wanted to voice my opinion in regards to a lot of the comments that I saw in the comments section of the video, a lot of the statements which he himself was making in regards to the scientific implications of the study, what Ethan was saying, what Hila was saying, and just how I think a lot of these other factors influence experience more so than just, obviously, ingesting substances definitely influences our experience here on life. I don't necessarily think things that we ingest have to be as extreme as what the population actually classifies as a drug even. I think anything we ingest really indefinitely has an influential effect on our body and our mind and how we perceive reality. As our body digests and incorporates this substance into our being, obviously it influences the way we act and the way we see the world. And that being said, the food we ourselves ingest is the most readily accepted and widely used drug on the planet. I think that the whole, term of what people describe to be a drug itself, especially among the scientific community, is extremely flawed, because what people say is a drug is like this final product of a packaged pill. And it's used for the easiness of its use. We can get really complex, and in our complexity we lose our simplicity of communication. Because, I could say that the electromagnetic frequencies emitted from a crystalline structure influence what I myself visually see upon the world. And that then is a drug. by definition, because it alters my state of perception and reality. And I'm talking about my cell phone here. That's what it is. It does just what it is that I just said it does. And that itself falls into the categorization of what we technically describe a drug as. So television and other forms of radio communications, and also vocal communications by physically emitting chemical structures of another person's being, could also be influencing drugs upon our body, changing and altering our system, influencing our perception of reality and our state of being. See, I can get extremely complex, but we lose the simplicity and the complexity, and we lose the complexity of simplicity by me going down that rabbit hole. And one other thing that kind of is in relation to where I was originally going with this statement is that I feel as though a lot of the scientific community doesn't necessarily properly ascribe, our perception of what drugs really are. And this is also in relation to me talking about food being a drug. Food is medicine, because, we see this finely packaged pill form of a substance. But what we don't really realize is that this is just an isolated, purified compound from a plant. You could literally gain what you find in this packaged pill by eating this substance, this plant, this food, right? And the majority of drugs are just chemically isolated and purified, bioreadily formed substances and molecules and compounds, which are much more easily to assimilate, incorporate into our biological form. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't go chew on a root and gain the same effects or benefits that you're getting from these things called drugs on the shelf in a store. I think a lot of it has to do with, monetary compensation and other things to that extent, where a lot of this stuff is given the characteristics that it is socially and publicly because of a few other factors at play in regards to the medicinal world itself.